Welcome everyone. In the previous lecture, we discussed the role of macronutrients in plant nutrition. So now in today's lecture, we'll try to cover the role of micronutrients in plant nutrition, right? So what do you mean by micronutrient? Micronutrient means the requirement of that mineral for the plant is less. It requires it in less amount. How much less? Means if the concentration of that mineral, if it is less than 10 millimoles per kg, then that is called microelement. Let's start a class with microelement. Role of micronutrients. Role of micronutrients. So micronutrients means the concentration of that nutrient, it is less than 10 millimoles per kg dry matter in the plant. What is the concentration, Amma? The concentration of these elements is less than 10 millimoles per kg dry matter. If it is less than 10 millimoles per kg dry matter, then that element is considered as a microelement. How much less it is? Often it is less than, in terms of ppm, if we have to tell, it is often less than 1 ppm. We can also tell its concentration is often it is less than 1 parts per million. There we told in terms of moles. How much? Less than 10 millimoles per dry matter. Here we are telling in terms of ppm. Often its concentration is less than 1 ppm, we will tell. Since the concentration is such less, we also call them as trace element. So micronutrients, they are also called, what are they also called? Microelements. And we can also call them as trace elements. They are also called as trace elements, children. And microelements and macroelements together are called as essential elements, right? 9 are macro, then remaining 8 are micro. How many trace elements are there? Means 8 microelements are there. Now, we made a code for macro 9 elements, we told CHO, MPN and CSK. For micro elements 8, we made a code. What is that? C square, IBM square, Zn, right? So what is the code we made? C square, IBM square, Zn. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. Total 8 elements come under microelements. Now we told, since once in NEET examination they asked us which element is absorbed in which ionic form. For macroelements we made a table like that. For microelements also we'll make the table for these 8 elements. Then we will talk about each and every element individually. So we'll start with our code. So the first C stands for copper. The second C stands for chlorine, and I stands for iron, B stands for boron, M stands for manganese, right? And IBM square, no, the next M stands for molybdenum, and 7th element Z stands for zinc. 8th element stands for nickel, right? These are the 8 elements. Now what are the elemental forms? Copper is represented by Cu, chlorine is represented by Cl, iron is represented by Fe symbol, boron is represented by B, manganese is represented by Mn, molybdenum represented by Mo, zinc Zn, children, nickel Ni. So these are the symbols. Now what are their ionic forms which are absorbed by the plant? Copper is absorbed as Cu2 plus form, cationic form. Chlorine is absorbed as anionic form. Now iron is absorbed mainly as ferric ion, Fe3 plus. Iron is mainly absorbed as Fe3 plus. Boron is absorbed as Boron is absorbed as BO3 3 minus, BO3 3 minus, or B4O7 2 minus. It's absorbed as BO3 3 minus or B4O7 2 minus. In this ionic form, boron is absorbed by the plant. Manganese Mn2 plus, and molybdenum, it is MoO2 2 plus. Molybdenum, it is absorbed as MoO2, molybdenum oxide. Okay. Then zinc as Zn2 plus. And nickel is absorbed by nickel Ni, right? It is Ni2 plus again. Ni2 plus again. So what did we write on the board? So we started microelements, and we are telling that the concentration of the microelement is less than 10 millimoles per kg dry matter of the plant. In terms of ppm, if you have to tell, it is lesser than 1 ppm we are telling. Since they are taken by the plant in such less concentration, we call them as trace elements, we call them as microelements. How many are there in number? 8 are micro, 9 are macro, 8 plus 9, 17 are essential elements. Now what are there? 8, we made a code. What is that? C square, IBM square, Zn is our code. C square, IBM square, Zn. C stands for copper, second C stands for chlorine, I stands for iron, B for boron, one M for manganese, another M for molybdenum, Z for zinc, N for nickel. And these are the symbols of the elements, and these are the ionic forms what plants will absorb them. Yeah, took a screenshot. Now let us talk about the microelements one by one. Now, do you remember when we are talking about macronutrients, we took that macronutrient which is required by plant in more concentration. In the same manner, out of these 8 micronutrients, which is that microelement which is required by the plant in more concentrations, means it is iron. So that's why we will start with iron. Among macronutrients, after CHO, the element which is required more by the plant is nitrogen. So that's why we started nitrogen first there. Here we'll start with iron. Why are we starting with iron? Because among micronutrients, iron is required by the plant in more concentrations. So our first element will be iron, right? So what did I tell for iron? Among the micronutrients, iron is absorbed by the plant in more concentrations. Plant absorbs more iron when compared to the other micronutrients. When compared to the other micronutrients, iron requirement by the plant is more. And in which form iron is absorbed by the plant? It is absorbed in ferric form, Fe3+. So plants absorb iron as Fe3+ ion. They absorb them as ferric ion. Now the pH of the soil will decide the rate of uptake of the ion. We know neutral soil will be there, acidic soil will be there, basic soil will be there. Acidic soil is more suitable for iron absorption. So we can tell soil pH controls the iron uptake by the plant. Soil pH controls the iron uptake by the plant, right? So which type of soil is favorable for iron absorption? Acidic soil. Acidic pH or acidic soil favors more absorption. If the soil is acidic, then the plant can absorb more and more iron. Now let's talk about the physiological functions of the iron. So what are the physiological roles of iron? Right? Now we were talking about electron transport chain. We were talking about in mineral nutrition also we talked that there is a chain called electron transport chain. This electron transport chain or electron transport system comes in photosynthesis also, and we can see this electron transport system in respiration also. We can see it in photosynthesis also. We can see it in respiration also. Now, in this electron transport chain, there are electron carriers through which the electrons will be moving. As the electrons are moving from one carrier to the next carrier, to the next carrier, to the next carrier, it helps in synthesis of ATP, right? Now, these electron carriers, electron transport system, it comprises of electron carriers. Now, there are some carriers like ferridoxin and cytochrome. Electron carriers names. One is ferridoxin, other one is cytochrome, have iron in them. So, electron carriers. Like, what are the examples? Ferridoxin is one example. Cytochrome is another example. Cytochrome have iron in their structure. Cytochrome and ferridoxin, what are they? Electron carriers. What do? They help in transport of electrons from this one to this one, from this one to this one. As the electrons are moving, they help in ATP synthesis. So now in ETS, right? So ATP synthesis occurs. That means iron is helping in energy generation. That is one function. Next, when the electrons are taken up by the iron, so then they get reduced, right? So they means they are reversibly oxidized to Fe2 plus and Fe3 plus state. So during electron transport chain, the iron, we can write, is reversibly. Iron is reversibly oxidized. So iron gets converted from ferrous state to ferric state and from ferric state to ferrous state. So it rotates. After taking the electron, after releasing the electron, it gets oxidized. So that's why we're telling during electron transport chain, iron is reversibly oxidized to Fe2 plus and Fe3 plus state. This is one more role. And do you remember the enzyme nitrogenase? Nitrogenase is an enzyme which helps in nitrogen fixation. It helps in nitrogen fixation. The nitrogenase enzyme contains iron and molybdenum. Nitrogenase enzyme, it contains iron and it contains molybdenum. So means we are telling iron is involved in electron transport chain, means iron will help in the synthesis of electron carriers like ferridoxin and cytochrome, one role. And during that electron transport, they get oxidized to Fe2 plus and Fe3 plus, ferrous and ferric forms. Then we are telling in nitrogen fixation, there is an enzyme called nitrogenase. This nitrogenase is nothing but it contains iron and molybdenum complex. And that's another role. Next one, iron acts as an activator for catalase enzyme. Iron acts as an activator for catalase enzyme. What will catalase and peroxidases do? Catalases and peroxidases, they break H2O2 into water and oxygen. Hydrogen peroxide is toxic. It should be broken down into water and nascent oxygen. For that, we need catalase. And catalase needs iron. Iron is an activator for catalase. Not only that, iron also helps in formation of chlorophyll. Another function is required for the formation. It is required for the formation of chlorophyll. Children, in the previous lecture, I showed you the structure of chlorophyll. Chlorophyll contains a structure like this. It contains 4 rings. It contains 4 rings. The 4 rings are joined this manner. And actually at the center first iron will come. At the center first iron will come. Then this iron goes out and magnesium will come. Iron goes out and magnesium comes. If magnesium comes, it is called chlorophyll. So first who is there instead of magnesium? Iron is there. Means iron is required for formation of chlorophyll. So how many functions did we list out for iron? So first function, we are telling that it acts as a carrier in electron transport chain. Examples of carriers are, one is ferredoxin, other one is cytochrome. Second function, we told during the electron transport, iron get reversibly oxidized, ferrous to ferric, ferric to ferrous. Third one, in nitrogen fixation, iron acts as an iron is part of an enzyme called nitrogenase. Nitrogenase enzyme contains iron also. It contains molybdenum also. It helps in nitrogen fixation. Plant needs nitrogen. Then the fourth one, we told iron acts as an activator. Metals are activators for enzymes. Like that, iron is activator for an enzyme called catalase. Catalase will break hydrogen peroxide into water. Now the last function we are telling, iron is required for the formation of chlorophyll. Actually in chlorophyll magnesium will be there, but first iron will be there, then iron will go out and magnesium will come. These are the 5 roles of iron, physiological roles of iron. Take a screenshot, then we will talk about the second element. Right children, so we finished the first element, which is iron. Now let us talk about the second element. We made a code like IBM square, no? So after iron, shall we go with boron? Now like iron, boron also has so many functions in plant metabolism. Let us discuss. So among micronutrients, first element what we finished is iron. And now we are going to talk about the second element called boron. Plant absorbs boron in which form? BO3, 3 minus, B4, O7 minus, right? So plant absorbs boron as BO3, 3 minus, or B4, O7 2 minus. It is B4O7 minus only. Yeah, B4O7 minus. In that form, the boron is absorbed by the plant. As I told you, iron has so many functions. Boron also has so many functions. What are the functions of boron? Boron helps in regulation of carbohydrate metabolism in the plant. Plant, by the process of photosynthesis, what does it manufactures? Glucose. What does it stores? Starch. What does it transports? Via phloem. Sucrose. Means plant has a huge traffic of carbohydrate metabolism. Who will control the carbohydrate metabolism? Boron. Boron regulates carbohydrate metabolism in the plant. So the first function is boron regulates carbohydrate metabolism. It regulates carbohydrate metabolism. This is the first function. So boron facilitates translocation of sugar. Means boron will take the sugar, it will make a complex called sugar borate, and that in that sugar borate form it is translocated to high distances via phloem. So facilitates translocation, movement of sugar in the form of sugar borate is the second function. What is the second function? Facilitates long distance transport, translocation. Facilitate translocation. Children, what is translocation? Long distance of transport with the help of vascular bundles is called translocation. Facilitates translocation of sugar in the form of sugar borate. In the form of sugar borate, it transports the sugar to all the parts of the plant. Not only that, now when the pollen grain comes and lands on the stigma, the pollen tube should form, right? Pollen tube should elongate and it should go through the style, then only the male gamete will reach the female gamete. So it helps in pollen elongation. It helps in elongation of the pollen tube. That also we can write. What is the third function? Boron helps in pollen tube elongation. It helps in pollen tube elongation. So when the pollen grain comes and lands on the stigma, then the pollen grain will form a pollen tube. Now through this pollen tube, male gametes will come. Now the pollen tube elongation is under the control of boron. So this is boron. What it will do? Will help to elongate. It helps to elongate pollen tube. This is the other function. So it helps in pollen germination and pollen tube elongation. So we can write the other function that boron helps in pollen germination also, pollen tube elongation also. Boron helps in pollen germination. Right? So that is another function. Next we can tell, like, if the calcium is very much required for the plant, for cell division, for middle lamellum formation, calcium is an activator for ATPase and amylase. Now, if the cell has to uptake calcium, if the cell has to utilize calcium, boron, in the presence of boron only it will happen. Means boron helps in uptake and utilization of calcium. What is the fifth function? So, in presence of boron only, cell can use calcium efficiently. So, boron helps in uptake and utilization of which element? Calcium. Calcium can be absorbed more by the plant in the presence of boron, and boron also regulates the cell membrane permeability. It regulates membrane functioning. Boron controls the membrane permeability. We can tell boron regulates cell membrane functioning. Boron regulates membrane functioning. So boron helps in cell elongation. So this is the pollen grain. It's a cell only. Cell elongation. It helps in cell elongation. It helps in cell differentiation. It helps in cell germination. So the last point what we can tell is boron helps in cell germination, cell elongation and cell differentiation. So boron helps in cell elongation. So here literally we can see that the pollen grain cell is enlarging, pollen tube is enlarging. So boron helps in cell elongation and cell differentiation. Children, all these are the functions of boron. We told boron is absorbed by the plant in the form of BO3 3-, B4O7-, and boron, it will overall control the carbohydrate metabolism. That is our first function. It helps in the translocation of sugar from one part to the other part of the plant. Sugar combines with boron in the form of sugar borate. In the form of sugar borate, sugar gets translocated, second function. Boron helps in pollen tube elongation, third function. So pollen tube, if it has to be formed, means first pollen should germinate. Boron also helps in pollen germination, next function. If the cell has to uptake, if it has to take calcium, if it has to utilize that calcium in the presence of boron only, it happens. It helps in uptake and utilization of calcium, and it controls the cell membrane functioning, cell membrane's permeability, next function. Boron helps the cells to elongate, it helps the cells to differentiate. So children, with this we finished the second element under microelements, that is boron. Take a screenshot. Then we will talk about IBM, manganese, the third element will come. Right, ma? Now let's go and discuss about the third element which comes under micronutrients. We are going with the order called IBM square. I, iron, B, boron, M square, manganese and molybdenum will come. We will discuss about manganese in this session, molybdenum in the next session. Now let's come to the third one. right? So what is it called? It is called manganese. Ganese. Manganese. Plant absorbs manganese as Mn2 plus. It absorbs manganese as Mn2 plus, and manganese major roles are it acts as an activator of the enzymes for photosynthesis, for the enzymes of respiration, for the enzymes of nitrogen metabolism also. We can tell that manganese acts as activator for the enzymes of manganese act as activator for the enzymes of photosynthesis. For photosynthetic enzymes, manganese is an activator. For respiratory enzymes also, manganese is an activator. For nitrogen metabolism also, manganese. In the nitrogen metabolism also, enzymes will come. There also, manganese is an activator, right? If we have to list down some examples for respiration, all the DH, KDH, MDH, right? So, in Krebs cycle, enzymes will come. In respiration, we have a cycle called Krebs cycle. In Krebs cycle, one enzyme is called malate dehydrogenase. We call it as MDH. And the other one is we call SDH. SDH means succinate dehydrogenase. Succinate dehydrogenase. And next one is KDH, MDH, KDH, SDH, GDH. All the dehydrogenases will come in Krebs cycle. For all of them, manganese is an activator. KDH stands for alpha ketoglutarate dehydrogenase. So these are some examples where manganese is an activator, and all these examples are part of respiration. Understood? Now, not only photosynthesis enzymes, not only respiratory enzymes, not only nitrogen metabolism enzymes. So manganese is an activator. It is an activator for IAA oxidase. What is IAA? Indole acetic acid. What is indole acetic acid? It is auxin. What is auxin? It is a plant hormone. So, related to plant hormone also, manganese has a role. Manganese acts as an activator for IAA oxidase. But the best defined function of manganese is, the last one is, the best function of manganese is, children, it is photolysis of water. The best function of manganese is photolysis of water. What is photolysis of water? Breaking water in photosynthesis. What is photolysis? It is nothing but breakdown of water during photosynthesis. Now come on, we will do it. We'll take the water molecule, we will break it. When you break it, you will get hydrogens, protons, electrons and oxygen. When you break water, you will get proton, you get electron, you get oxygen. This is the oxygen which the plant is releasing into the atmosphere. That is oxygen which we are taking and we are surviving. So breaking oxygen, releasing oxygen in photosynthesis, very important. Who will do it? Manganese will do it. So the best defined function, the best function of manganese is photolysis of water, breakdown of water during photosynthesis to release oxygen. Right, children? In this session, we covered 3 elements, right? What are they? Iron, boron, manganese. In the next lecture, we'll try to cover the remaining elements of micronutrients. If you like the content, like, share, subscribe to my channel. Thank you.